Hi, my name's Russell Holden from the Veteran Garage, and we've been on a journey to uncover the inner workings of one of the earliest forms of carburetion for an internal combustion motor, the surface carburetor. The motives for this is that we've purchased two very early motorbikes, both of which have surface carburetors, and my understanding of surface carburetors prior to this journey was zero. So the journey has taken me all the way from Australia to Arizona to my good friend Alan Travis's, who has a 1897 Dion Tricycle that is used extensively, including completing the run of the London to Brighton. So we're going to introduce the bikes to you, both of them, and then we're going to show you the video of Alan explaining the inner workings of the surface carburetor, and then the practical use of his Dion Trike with a surface carburetor. So I hope you enjoy what we think is very educational. So this is the circa 1902 Dion motorised bicycle, and I say motorised bicycle because it's what they call a clip-on, where the motor is actually clipped onto the frame of the bicycle. And this is a very interesting bike. That's the little Dion motor. This here is the gas tank and the carburetor built into one. This is the battery box here, and the coil here. If we come down here, this is the timer, the automatic exhaust valve, and this is the atmospheric inlet valve. So if we look here, we see we've got a couple of levers here. This is the air control. I don't know if you can actually see that move in there. That's the air control. That's the mixture control. And what I understand, and I'm actually going to see my good friend Alan Travis, who's got a Dion Trike and understands the surface carburetor operations a lot better than I do. I thought originally that was a tickler, but you can hear that rattle. That's a plate in the bottom that actually allows the volatile mixture to be sucked up over the top of the plate and into the inlet pipe, which is this here coming out of the petrol tank, into there and into the atmospheric inlet valve. So one of these is decompression, the other one is timing, and it's a really interesting bike. It runs on a belt, in this case a round belt, which comes around. That's an idler pulley to put pressure on the belt, goes around there and runs back around again. So as soon as the motor is running, well, you jump on it, start pedaling, get the motor running and stop pedaling in theory. This is good because it's got good movement, good compression and everything. Shouldn't take much to get going at all. And it's a cracker of an original thing. Right up my alley, original unrestored. So that's the Dion bike. And shortly I'll do a similar video on our 1898 Bourgery bike. So this is the 1898 Bourgery. So this was a bike that was produced by a young fellow. He started the idea of putting a motor in a bicycle in 1893, and in 1896 he made his first bike, and he made 12 of them between then and the end of 1899. So this is what I believe is the 9th of those bikes. So you can, if I come down here, you can see where it says Bourgery there. That's the timer for the motor, and it's actually a motorbike, because unlike the clip-on that I described in the Dion, this here is a dedicated frame structure that's designed to hold the motor. So that makes it a motorbike as opposed to a clip-on bicycle. But this bike has a number of other very different features. This is the gas tank. Quite obvious if I come around this side. You can see where you fill the gas there. And this is the battery box. This is the coil. And what's unusual about this and different from the Dion is that this is the carburetor. It's a surface carburetor the same as a Dion, but it's separate to the tank. Most surface carburetors are contained within the tank. This one is not contained within the tank. So if we have a look at this, that there is the inlet manifold. This, similar to the Dion, controls the flow of the mixture into the motor. This controls the air mixture that's coming out of the carburetor, atmospheric inlet valve, and mechanical exhaust valve again. And you can see that it's quite different. I believe there would have been, this actually turns, hence the tape on it to make sure it stays there at the moment. And I believe there would have been an on-off switch, a cut-off switch for the ignition in there. And it's very unusual in the fact that it's got a proper band style brake, and this is the brake pedal, and there's a cable that actually operates that brake. So it's quite unusual. It's very unique. And the thing I love about it is that it's original, unrestored. Our intention is to get it going and ride it and enjoy it. So again, it runs on a belt, but it doesn't have an idler pulley. You can see down here, that's the drive pulley. And again, we've got nice compression, nice turnover. We'll be going through the motor and everything to check everything. But the belt goes from there, up here, onto this here, around there and back again. Again, you have to pedal it to start, and once it starts, in theory, you stop pedaling it. So, yes, very interesting thing. One of the other interesting items is this line here. So that's actually a line from the exhaust into the gas tank. So whether that's to warm it, whether that's to bubble it, I'm not 100% sure, but yes, very interesting.
Okay, this is the surface carburetor for an 1897 to 1899 Dion bike and other miscellaneous bikes with surface carburetors. This is a chimney right here, this small piece, and this chimney goes up and down, and when this chimney, which is that top little thimble, goes up and down, it moves this top plate, which is right here, up and down. So you have a float that you can barely see. That circle here is the float. And that float is sitting somewhere in that fluid. And then that little tiny little pinprick of a needle is the top of the float. So this top of this little needle needs to be about 1/2 inch above the chimney. As you use your fuel, the fuel will go down, i.e. that little needle will go down. And with that going down and the fuel going down, then your gap, this plate has too much of a gap. So your mixture, because you haven't condensed your combustible fumes, is now spread too tight. So even a race bike that runs an atmospheric carburetor, you need to stop every 10 miles at the very most and turn around and look at that needle and keep that needle about 1/2 inch above your chimney to have the right mixture, which takes only a second. You just push it up and down. So that's really important. The next thing about the chimney is when you're done using the bike, you put a cork above that chimney, because with the mixture that you're using with the hexane and the heptane or the petroleum ether or your aircraft fuel, if you leave that chimney open, that is really atmospheric. It'll evaporate because the stuff is really potent. It'll evaporate. So always, 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 when you're not riding the bike, you have a chimney. You have a cork in this chimney, and you're pushing this back in. I'll show you that on the bike too. These two are your mixture controls. So these aren't levers here. These are actually rods that go to the front of the bike. okay, and you control it up and down or back and forth, and these rods move this, and this is your combustible mixture and your pressure from your exhaust system. So the atmospheric carburetor is the flow of the fumes goes two ways, or is powered by two things. One is by the suction of the atmospheric valve in the intake that sucks the fuel in, and once it runs, the exhaust pressurizes the back of the tank, and that pressurizes the tank. So the intake valve sucks it in, the exhaust pipe pressurizes the tank and pushes it in. The fuel, the most you have in the tank is probably 2 or 3 inches of volatile fuel. If you use some of the fuels, the boiling point is in the 90s, so be careful how hot it is that day. You know, you might have a bomb. That's how it works.
So this pipe running through there and coming out there, so that's coming from the exhaust valve.
Yep.
So what's that?
That's pressurizing it.
That's pressurizing it.
Yep.
So it comes out there. How does it pressurize it?
There's a slits inside that pressurize it. There's ways that pressurize it. That's just a depiction of how it's doing it.
Okay.
But you have two pipes going in to it. You know, one is from the intake valve, which is actually the output of the mixture, and one is the exhaust pressurizing it. So you have two things happening. It's not just your pedaling. In static form, if you tried to start it without it, the engine spinning over, it's not going to do anything. It's not moving the fuel. The fuel isn't anywhere near the intake valve.
Yep.
So by you pedaling, and how long do you have to pedal it? 3 or 4 strokes. It's fired and you're going. And then you will adjust these two levers, which are on the middle of the bike. And then you also have timing. This is your ignition source that I showed you on the bench in there. That's what was on the bench.
So that's the Ruhmkorff coil.
Yeah. So on your Ruhmkorff coil, it has timing advance on your Ruhmkorff. And what you're doing is you're moving the timer. So you have just a really rudimentary timer that you're rotating on the shaft. And if you have too much, the bike will stop dead.
Too advanced.
Right. But once you get to 20, 25 mile an hour, you advance it and it'll scare you to death.
Okay. All right.
And then on the batteries, you have to have 6 or 7 or 8 volts.
Okay.
So we're going to test the battery voltage. And the last thing is you have a make and break. And this is your switch. That M, that's on your handlebars. So on your handlebars, you're going to twist it. And when it gets tight, it makes a connection to the battery. So just like a 1910 airplane, you have full throttle all the time, but you make and break on the throttle. Okay. So if you get scared out in the road, you just give it throttle half the time, which you're not. You're just making and braking half the time. So you have ignition or you don't. You have ignition or you don't. So you control your speed. You know, so you set the two controls to 20 mile an hour, 25, or you set it to 35 mile an hour. And then that's all you do on your mixture controls, which is kind of like your throttle. And then you control your actual speed by making and braking on your hand throttle.
Okay.
That's how you control your speed. And you can control it well enough to drive it in traffic. You can.
Practice.
Yeah, I mean, there's cactus out there and you're going to learn.
Yep. All right, let's look at the bike. So this is obviously very similar to the Dion. The battery box is different. This is earlier, so it's got the Ruhmkorff coil, which ours would appear just to have a normal, very old style, but normal coil. I haven't worked the chimney section out on ours, and Alan and I are going to look at the video of what ours look like, and he may actually pick up things that I didn't know before being here today. But the principle of the carburetor on the Dion bike is exactly the same as the Dion Trike, albeit smaller on the bike. And the other principles as far as exhaust going into the carburetor to pressurize it, and I didn't realise you should actually just fill it and turn the petrol off, so that's a real learn. And then obviously you've got exactly the same principle, different setup as far as your atmospheric inlet valve, which is here sucking from the tank. And as Alan was explaining when we were looking at the diagram, the exhaust is actually pressurizing that at the same time. So you've got pressure in the tank wanting to force the vapors out, and you've got atmospheric inlet, which when the piston goes down, wants to suck the vapors in. So they're working together to try and get gas into the cylinder.
Now I'm going to turn the fuel on, and the fuel turned on is essence.
Okay.
So that's the bleeder, and this turns it on.
So that's just a needle valve in the bottom of the tank.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that should be filling it.
So at the end of the day, we should see the wire come up
Yeah.
out of the chimney.
Yeah. If there's fuel in there, and there should be some. Guess we could look and see. I have more car fuel if there's not. But... yeah, there's fuel. And you can see the needle at some point come up.
Yep, needle's coming up now. You can
Okay.
just see it.
So if it goes to ½ an inch, we're good.
But it's not far off ½ an inch now.
Okay, so I'll turn this back down. That's now right. We can adjust that by putting the chimney higher and lower.
Yes. Okay. Yep. So we've now got fuel in the bottom of the tank
Yes.
here where the plate is.
And how far is the plate above the top of fuel?
½ an inch.
Right.
Yes.
So that's the right. Now, if we're going to be on a track and we're getting the maximum, and we had practice time, you might measure that for that atmospheric condition, the heat and the humidity. You might find that the 3/8 or 5/8 is better or something, and
Yes.
and you can figure out where your openings for your two controls are. But it'll fire now.
Yep.
Okay. So we'll put this back on for a minute.
So that doesn't evaporate.
You're right.
So we've actually pushed the plate back down now.
Yeah, kind of. No, we actually haven't. We just moved the float. The float is coming up. So we just pushed the top of the float back down.
So the float's immersed under the fuel in the tank.
It's not happy, it's sunk.
Yeah, exactly.
But the plate, we move the plate by moving this thing up and down.
Oh, so move the plate by moving the chimney.
Right.
Okay.
That's up to the plate.
Yes. Okay.
Okay. And this is your oil.
Yep.
And I think it might have enough oil, but it'll dripped out too. So the oil is kind of neat. You pull it up and push it down. Pull it up and push it down.
Okay.
Pull it up and push it down.
So what does the twisting do?
It doesn't, you have to turn it back and forth to the pull up and push down.
So it won't pull up in the down. Yeah, okay. Yep.
Okay, that's the push
Yep.
and that's the pull.
Okay. All right. And that's pressurizing the tank?
Yeah, it's pressurizing the, well, no, I think it's pulling up an amount of oil in this tube and pushing it down.
Oh, and pushing it down through this
Yeah.
here into the bottom of the
Yeah,
crankcase.
right, so you have some oil there.
Yep.
So that's what that is.
Okay.
So we got enough oil in there.
Okay.
Okay, so now, by all rights, it should go. So let me play with it for a second, get it to
Yeah.
kind of go, but I think it will. All right. Okay, so now cork in your pocket.
Yep.
Make sure that your chimney is about right. And I've never ridden it where it's this hot, so I don't know if there's situations where heat is more, you need more or less, or I don't know. But it shouldn't matter. Stop.
Yeah, just tell me how. Hang on, I'm coming. Hey? No, that's out. Here comes Alan back up the street.
When you get to the end of the driveway, make sure you turn the ignition off, because you're going to be hard pressed to turn that driveway to the right.
Okay. Off is that way, on is that way.
Yes.
I can feel the switch go on.
That's good.
Right, okay. So start pedaling.
Yep.
I hope you've enjoyed these videos and that they've been somewhat educational. They certainly have been for us, and we're going to take these findings back to Mudgee and be able to hopefully implement them and have both bikes running in the very near future. Look forward for video updates of how we actually go about the recommissioning of both bikes. As you can probably see from my surroundings, I'm not filming this in Mudgee. Indeed, we're in London, England. We're here for the London to Brighton run. We've shipped our 1902 Thomas over, and that run on the 3rd of November is something we're very much so looking forward to, and you can look forward to plenty of video updates of both the pre-run events and the actual run itself. So I hope to see you then.